Okay. Well, welcome to the April 22nd, 2025 session of TAPR and HamSCI technical session. My name is Dave, KB0S, and this week I've actually got my 3D printer working again. I had to order a few parts from Europe to get it working, but it is working again. And I've been prepping for getting ready to go to Dayton. Dave and I are traveling there together this year. So we'll have a road trip down I-70. So next on the list is Nathaniel, W2NAF. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Steve. The big thing here is that I'm working with Rob Robinette and Elmer Musser and Jonathan Rizzo and some other people at the university here to upgrade the antennas of my personal space weather station system. So that's what we're doing. Back to net.
Very good. Next on the list is Dave, KD0EAG. Go ahead.
Well, I guess like I was saying, I've been spending a lot of time I'm partly trying to get ready to put a ground station up at my farm up in the north part of the state where it is hopefully quiet. But it turns out it's a long list of things I need to have to take up there, before I even try to do it. It takes a lot of post hole diggers and this and that, but and other than that, not a lot to report really. Rewriting some of the magnetometer software, hopefully, but bringing it up to date. But other than that, nothing.
Okay. I will mention that Mark gave us a note that he's got no camera and no mic, but he's in Eastern Asia, and we welcome you. And please, if you can come back, please do. We always happen to have people listening. Next on the list is Elmer. Go ahead, Elmer.
What Nathaniel said. That's it. Back to net.
Okay. Then next on the list, we got Bill Engelkey. Bill?
Thanks, Dave. Not a lot to report here. I'm finding that when I load my server with enough, I'm reading in the Great 2 data, and it's got to be loaded in and converted to DRF and then plotted and all this and that, and it puts enough load on the system that it causes the watchdog system to fail. So I've got a lot of debugging to do to dig down, and something's happening in the Linux kernel when you get to a certain level, it starts shedding load. And I didn't think that 40% CPU load would be someplace where the server would start shedding load, but apparently it does. So anyway, struggling with that a little bit, but that's about all the report here. Back to net.
Okay. The next on the list is Bob, WB0VGD. Go ahead, Bob. Mike muted.
There you go. I was blabbing away, and of course nobody could hear me. Maybe that's just as well. But no, I had a lot of fun over the past few days playing around with meteor scatter. So it was very interesting. I couldn't complete contacts, but I could get decodes, and people could hear me out to about 1,000 miles away. But I couldn't complete a contact. But I think it has a lot to do with 10 meters having a vertical and 6 meters having a vertical and only 70 watts. But I had a lot of fun with it anyway. It was very interesting.
Very good. That's it.
That's about it.
Yeah. Okay. Next on the list is Jim, K4BSE. Go ahead, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I've gotten started a little bit on a project I've wanted to do for some time now of kind of poking around in the VLF bands a little bit. I'm building that little NASA preamp to go on the antenna. And I was planning to use a loop antenna, but looking at the schematic of that preamp, it wants a very high impedance. So I'll probably use, I've got a attic mounted 40-meter dipole, probably just put the two sides together and work that against the ground for an antenna to start with. And I just kind of poke along and poke around and see what I can do. But I had screwed up and I owed a magazine article today. So it will go in the morning. I have written it now, but I just need to sit on it overnight and then give another read through it in the morning before I send it to him. Back to net K4BSE.
Okay. Next on the list is David McGaw in one HAC. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Um, just general futzing around, playing with antennas of various sorts, and um, something completely different. I'm tearing into an ARP 2600 synthesizer from the 70s. There's a throwback. Um, but um, Oh, there's one thing I wanted to bring up when we're talking antennas, and this is something having to do with working in polar places. Is verticals are not necessarily the best choice. Loops are preferred because loops are grounded, and verticals pick up large amounts of static electricity, which is a major problem in Arctic climes. So keep that in mind as you work with antennas. You can put protections on there, but yeah, um, static electricity is a real thing in the driest climates on Earth. So back to net.
Okay. Very good. Next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EEY. I assume Jonathan's also working with you guys.
Hi, everybody. Yep, I am working with Nathaniel and Rob and Elmer. Rob and Elmer and Nathaniel, it's always good to meet up in person. We had a good time today. Some really good conversation. Many many of them before the fun starts. So tomorrow I will be working with them on the single antenna system and the VLF system, the interaction uh, with with the VLF system, and other sorts of fun items. So I'm really looking forward to that. Um, uh, I was also working with Paul Elliott. Paul, I do apologize. I did not get a chance to respond to your email, but yes, what I would like to do, and I think it's something that's very important, is that we should talk about the GPS interface. So Paul has spun up a GPS interface in KiCad, and I've been talking to him about the various design choices um, regarding connectivity and its function and everything else. He's been doing a great job, but obviously issues came up, particularly um, the um, aluminum enclosures that we should use. You know what size, what supplier. We're talking about increased costs with tariffs and all of that. So it's something that we definitely need to talk about. But the GPS interface is very important because it's going to interface with the sound card and provide a pulse per second. So this is a very important component of the VLF system. That's all I have right now. Back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list is Paul Elliott. Go ahead, Paul. He's got his finger up.
Okay,
There
I
he
had to
goes.
find my mouse and the mute button here. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, I've been talking, trading email with Jonathan on that thing. Jonathan, this is the board, pardon me, the case that I've been getting from Adafruit and Yongu, the Chinese company. And I don't know what the price is going to be. We could changing the enclosure. Anyway, changing enclosures, if it turns out we need to use a domestically made enclosure, it's easy enough to modify to change the board dimensions and just, pay double or triple for the enclosure. It depends on the budget and, actually the most costly thing on it is by a large factor is the GPS chip you want to use. So, just in the overall context of the cost, maybe the enclosure isn't that big a deal. Anyway, I'd love to talk to you about how to actually kickstart this thing. Other stuff I've been doing is Scott Newell and some others have been talking about another sort of time reference, which is again, feeding a pulse into the RF port or a signal of some sort, and I'm advocating for a BPSK, quasi-random spread spectrum type of signal that would be used for to be a precise timing source that would get down to into the tens of microsecond region accuracy. And so I was looking at what I could do with the stuff I have on hand, just as prototypes for experimenting. So I took one of my old Beacon Blaster boards. I now have my timing accuracy to better than plus or minus 20 microseconds, and I think I can do better lining up in the internal timing to the 1 pulse per second GPS, and I can modulate BPSK with again within that 20 microsecond accuracy. Actually, the modulation is much tighter than that, at up to, let's say, a 2 kilobit per second BPSK rate, which if the receiver and the receiver software can receive and demodulate and align to that, that will give certainly useful timing level accuracy. Whether it's good enough, and we need to look at other techniques, that remains to be seen. I did sell this morning a ham who is not directly part of the HamSCI group, ordered a whisper sound, and one of these guys, my filter combiner for 9 bands. So I put that in a box, but he's in New York and he's aware of HamSCI, and I'll try to get you guys in contact. So, he may be a he may be a participant, or at least provide signals that you guys can use in one way or another. Don't know if his New York location, meets your criteria for new sites, but it'll be out there apparently. So that was nice. And I did just pull the trigger on ordering 10 more of the WhisperSound boards from China. We'll see if the 100% or 150% tariff, what that does to those costs. We'll find out. I just have no idea. That's about it. Well, I've done a bunch of other electronic geekery, but I won't belabor the point. So back to Net.
Okay. Next on the list is Phil, K9Q. Go ahead, Phil.
Let's see. Hi, guys. Nothing really much to report. Was dealing with a couple of minor support issues that I think I've resolved. It's always strange when you see something that fails and you have no idea why. You spend your time looking at the code and, okay, I found a workaround, but that's not good enough. I want to find the root cause and fix it. And then you go nuts until you do. So anyway, that's about it. Back to you, Dave.
Okay. And then next on the list is Scott Newell in 5TNL. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey everybody, I was pretty busy this last week between pull requests and Easter and the FMT and work and Costas loop and fighting gain calibration, but in the end, I think I created more questions than answers, so I don't know. I could use some DSP advice if we have time tonight, and that's it for me. Back to Net.
Well, that's how we learn, is fixing things and finding out how the fixes do or don't work. Anyway, I think that, Rob Robinette's next on the list. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, well, I hope I'm the last on your list.
Yes, I think you are.
Okay, because well, obviously I'm here to Elmer to work with Jonathan out at Nathaniel's. That's the agenda for the week. I have been had only a little time to pursue some deployment issues. I think Phil looked into one of them, which I wondered, did you resolve things out there? This was at VY0 ERC, where it wasn't receiving the multicast advertisement, so there's reporting nothing. I'm not sure if that means that there's no signals up there.
No, I'll tell you what happened quite briefly. When KNIQ Radio starts, it starts a bunch of Abahai advertise processes that advertise the services and the IP address domain name pairs. And for some reason, when you specified a multicast, when you specified an interface that wasn't really the right one, it would start the service advertisements, not the address advertisement. So all I had to do was simply turn off the iFace line and everything started to work. Now I'm trying to figure out why. Anyway, so it is working now. We found a workaround.
Okay, I have another site that has a strange problem that it does receive streams and post streams, but control doesn't work, doesn't see anything. I can run my I can do control if I give it the name of a 20-meter band, the SSRC, it will display it. But control doesn't ever give me a list of it says that it can't find any. So any radio D advertising.
It sounds like a similar problem.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll go back and I'll take a look and try to see if that removing
just don't use the iFace line in the config file for now.
I guess I was using it
taking
because
it out.
I was using it because these are both Starlink connected sites.
Yeah, well, as I just found with the VY0 site last night, it worked better if you just take it out, because now first of all, are these sites with the time to live set to 0?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
They're all set. Yeah,
in that case, I ought to just ignore the interface because it always uses loopback internally when the TTL is 0. I think that's where my problem was.
Okay, well, I will take a look at that site, maybe even while you discuss something else.
I've been thinking about just ripping out all the code in KNIQ Radio that refers to an interface.
Yeah. Well, the issue I thought was it was there to protect it. If you had a Wi-Fi interface, you don't want to saturate the Wi-Fi.
That's right. That's right.
But
if the TTL is 0, then none of that matters.
Yeah, but if TTL is 1,
Yeah,
And
then you have
there's
to
a
make sure you
Wi-Fi.
pick the proper network. That's correct.
Okay. So you think that if TTL is one and there is a Wi-Fi, you really do need interface to find.
I'm not sure if that's the right place to do it, but yes.
Okay. Because I think we've had other sites where the stream advertisements just disappear after a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I know
And
this is a common configuration. It's very common for a machine to have both a Wi-Fi interface and an Ethernet interface, and often for both of them to be on the same network. And
yeah.
you do not want to actually, you don't even want to listen on both networks
No.
because that will draw in duplicates on the way ICMP, IGMP snooping works. You'll draw in duplicates on both, and you don't want that. You don't want all that multicast traffic on your Wi-Fi network.
Okay. Well, next time I encounter it, I'll go check that other site out, see if
Okay.
it's. But so there's no need to move to new code. I'm still using Scott's dash web server is referenced was tested against the February version of your code. So that's what Whisper Daemon installs. His Scott's server version 2.67, I think, is the
Okay,
new one.
all right. I haven't done any major pushes in a couple weeks now, but you might want to go to something more recent.
Well,
I sent you some pull requests to move that along. There were
Okay.
some calibration issues with
haven't
the
even
latest,
checked
but
pull
it's all
requests.
minor stuff, but it needs your eyes on it because I don't know
Okay.
that I'm in the right track.
Yeah, thank you for looking at this.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
okay. If you, well, I'm happy to, if Scott, just send me a note if you decide to use that you're functional or have new features and ready to have Whisper Daemon sites use the new version. I just need to know it. I don't really track what you're checking in, Scott. So, but I can modify. I will. I would rather incorporate the newest but tested software from both of you. One other person we need to thank, Paul. I thank you for sending out that distribution amp. I appreciate that. I don't think Nathaniel's been in. But Majid would pick that up. Would he pick it up if it arrived, Nathaniel? Because we're gonna need it to run more than one 888.
Yeah, if either Majid can pick it up, or it's not hard for me to run down and pick it up either.
Well, we're right next to the university. If we could pick it up for you.
Yeah,
but
I mean
probably, I don't think did they? Do you think they received deliveries today on Monday, or would it?
I think the office staff was out today. I think it's still a holiday for the university, but they'll be back tomorrow.
I'm
So
gonna try to check the
by
delivery.
midday tomorrow, we should be able to have it.
Okay. Well, we'll work with what we have tomorrow.
We certainly have enough stuff up here to get work and searching for noise and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. We have enough. Anyway, I just want to leave you with 3 working sites. 3 working.
Yeah. We'll make sure we get that stuff up here.
Yeah. The other thing is that I don't currently, one of the bugs I've encountered is that Paul, as you know, that I have sites where the meta dump command just doesn't receive any information about from your code about the average signal levels and the number of overload events and a few other things that I've been gathering from your status messages. Since that seems like a really fragile, the metadome seems very fragile. I was thinking of removing it, but looking through the code this morning, it meant I will no longer be logging overload events, AGC events, and so on. along into the extended spot database. I don't think those logging that information is necessarily useful. I mean, overload events now are basically doing it, are you take care of the fact that with the 888 we don't have to worry about overloading, and unless something is grossly wrong. So can I pull out, logging things like, the RF gain settings and so on, and the number of overloads? Can I stop logging that? I don't. This is a question for scientists, not for Paul or for Phil. I think Phil Erickson. I put Nathaniel looks completely confused by the question, so maybe we need to talk about this in person.
Yes, I think so.
Paul had a very confused look on his face too.
So anyway, it's I'm just trying to make the software more reliable in more sites.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I can think of at the moment. So back to you, back to Net.
Okay, well, I think we're through the list. I don't know if somebody snuck in that I didn't call on. Lower numbers. Oh, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just that box that I sent off to Nathaniel, that is at the Scranton, PA Distribution Center this afternoon. So I guess it's close, but no cigar yet.
That's fine. We can.
So, Rob, you've increased the span of latitudes in which KNIQ radio is running. You said that site in Canada is at what, 82 degrees north?
Yes, PY0, where you were working on Saturday evening,
and
82 north, and then DP0 is at, I think, 78 degrees south. I forget.
Okay.
They're sitting on the ice. They're sitting. DP0 is sitting on the ice, and
yeah, they're right on the coast, though, I think.
Yeah, they're on the coast.
Yeah, sitting on an ice.
They, unfortunately, they're not conjugate. I don't think, to each other. So we need more. And I guess is the Antarctic project still alive?
I was just going to ask you that question.
Yes, it is still alive. In fact, one of the things I need some more information from you this week, Rob. We have to fill out this supporting information package, and we need to include information about how much data and is being sent back and where the data is going to. So either tomorrow or the day after, but someday this week we should sit down and talk about that. But yes, it's still alive, but it's a very slow process. So.
I think one of the things we really need to do is test the hardware we're using for the conditions out there. I haven't looked at I'm sure we have no specifications about the AAA, and given our experience with the kind of fragility of the BGA soldering to the printed circuit board, I could imagine that thermal cycling to minus 27 Fahrenheit and back to room temperature or something might eventually stress the solder joints, and there could be many other. Who knows about the B-Link? Same thing could be true of the B-Link. So I think once we get your 3 antenna systems going, we should think about environmental testing of long-term site, testing. And I'm sure that David could tell us a lot more about how to do that, because I think that may be the bigger issue about getting a system down there that's reliable.
Well, what I would also, if you're talking about those temperature extremes, is I know there's no humidity, but there's humidity. So I'm just curious about dew points and moisture getting into things.
Yeah, well, that's That's another, yeah, another thing is, I
What
gather,
dew point?
yeah.
Can you say absolute zero?
Really? There's no moisture down there in the air?
Oh, very, very. It really is literally the driest place on Earth.
Really? And yet there's snow, I guess.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
because the
They go
No,
snow,
there
yeah, if
because,
snow blows into it and then it gets warmed up, then you'll have moisture. But
Yeah.
yeah,
and
those,
that is a problem. Snow gets through very small orifices and slots.
yeah, it's ironic that they put those millimeter wave radio telescopes at the South Pole because it's the driest place on Earth, but they're standing on 9,000 feet of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yes,
have a,
but
fr-
it is quite frozen.
I have a freezer that I was using for camping, and the freezer is capable of going down to -20. And so it's small and it gets there relatively quick. So if we want to set that up as an environmental chamber, like I used to do with electronic scales when I worked for another company, I could, we have equipment, I could put it in there and we can run it up and down.
Well,
Yeah, I've got a chamber at work too. It'll go down to -80 if we need it.
You win.
you said that I think I heard in one of the discussions that if they receive or lose power, it will go down to ambient temperature of -27 Fahrenheit, which is what probably -30 centigrade or so, right?
Yeah, yeah, about 35,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah,
Have you?
the thing to remember is -40 is where things cross over.
Yeah.
It's -40 is the same in centigrade and Fahrenheit.
What's your experience been down there with these temperature cycling and so on? Is that
Well, it hasn't really, down there, it doesn't cycle that much. Things
Yeah.
are buried in the snow generally and quite well insulated. So you just.
But it would be when there's a power loss and there's nothing.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. But like when for instance, preamps, they're out at the antenna and they're just buried in the snow and they keep themselves warm, and hardly change. But yeah, when the power goes out, that's the real problem. That's why I'm saying that as we designed for this, we probably want to have a box with a heater in it, and you have a timer that sets it up. It heats the box before you turn instruments on.
Filament warm time.
But other than that, you're talking about temperature cycling and breaking solder joints and such. This would be a rare occurrence. You really don't temperature cycle in these environments.
Oh, good. I hope not. Well,
and likewise, if we have a heater in our box, you can just set it and it will keep at a constant temperature.
Well, we'll have the B-Link will be consuming between the B-Link and the 888. They consume about 25 watts.
Yeah. Sometimes
pretty much,
you actually have to get rid of heat rather than generating heat.
Yeah, well, we might.
I mean, we would, in our vault at South Pole, we had the computers in a box, and with the lid on it, the computers would overheat. We actually had to put the lid askew. It was a rather crude form of temperature control, but that's what ended up being done. And then the problem is that a technician not in the know would go down there, do something, and then he'd put the lid back on.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can test this and come up with a box that's appropriate and test it ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, there's a way to model it as well. I mean, we've done do extensive thermal modeling of spacecraft, but
Yeah. I can't remember where I was that I was doing. I put it in. Oh yeah, I put everything in a styrofoam picnic box and punched a few holes in it to get enough ventilation. This was not exposed to snow. It was it was an unheated cabin environment. And but my goal there was that I was trying to stabilize the frequencies.
I wonder if we're trying to solve a problem that in practice it doesn't really happen. I mean, it shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I used to have access to all sorts of fancy temperature chambers. Now I don't. I limited range, 0 to 50 stuff I can do, but it seems like, maybe we had to take a couple 888s, a couple of the B links, find somebody who's going to let us use a chamber and just cycle the things a dozen times and just see what happens.
That's what I think. We can do this with Elmer. Elmer sounds like I mean, Dave, you sound like you have the professional equipment, but it's probably good enough to just try it out at Elmer's freezer.
And also, I mean, yeah, most of when I used to do this stuff, it was mainly, does it still, over what range, temperature range, where does it stop working? Where do the frequencies go out of spec? Things like that. Where do the rise times of the data get so fast because it's so cold that ringing destroys it doesn't function anymore. But it sounds like what you're more interested in is just, thermal stress actually mechanically damaging it. And for that, we don't, I got a deep freeze here and I've got an oven I can set to, 150 degrees and take a unit, move it from one to the other. That's all the cycling you need. Anyway, if we're worried about this, I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to solve the problem until we know that we have a problem.
Mm.
I like staging stuff ahead of time, so wouldn't want to. And if this might go down next winter, is that the target?
Yeah, it's very hard to tell right now. This is where putting in the SIP goes into play. So I think the way they prefer things to be installed is they prefer that someone from the grantee team actually goes down and installs it themselves. And that person could be someone, I'd have to talk with NJIT who that person would be. So it might be an NJIT person. It could be someone that we pick. I don't know. But anyway, this year, there's not going to be any grantee deployment. And what we're asking for is what's called a research associate. So someone who's already down there to possibly take one of our systems and put it in for us. And we don't know. We're going to ask for this, but we don't know whether or not that is actually going to be granted to us. So we may be able to have something installed this year, and that thing may be put in by one of the people who's already down in Antarctica, or we may have to wait for a whole additional year before we can actually send anyone anywhere.
Are there any hams at these stations already?
Sometimes there are. There's already a ham station down there. So depending on who the staff is, sometimes there's someone on staff or a couple people on staff who are hams. Sometimes there are grantees that are down there that are hams, but there's no guarantee. But it's not even, but for what we have to do, because of the way the contracts work and things like that, this all has to be approved by the bureaucratic system.
Yeah.
And even right now, getting information from someone who's already down there is proving to be more difficult than you think it should be. But So that's another thing we're putting in the SIP, is to ask for time for someone who's down there to actually talk with us. But
Yeah.
yeah. So
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, the German station's been a lot easier to do. So.
Yes. Yeah, this is a very slow bureaucratic process, and things are not being made any easier by, there's a lot of things that are making things less easy. So, yeah. One of the reasons there's no deployment this year is doing they're doing renovations to McMurdo Station, and so it's for a long time it has been planned that during this renovation period there would be much less science deployment, and they'd put more of their effort into doing the renovations. So that's why there was no deployment last year or this year. So we've known this for a while.
Well, I can understand that.
Yeah. So I think the hope is that this year we can get an RA, research associate, to put a couple of these things in for us. And if they can, that's wonderful. And if not, we have another year to plan and actually try to get one of our team members to go down and install it.
Okay, well, I'm not a candidate to go there. I can come to Scranton, but I'm not going to the South Pole for HamSCI. I'm sorry.
Well, I want to let you go there anyway.
Well,
Certainly.
there are a number of us that would go in an instant.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I'd go, except I'd be useless for most of the stuff that's probably going to go wrong. So probably not me. But if I could help, I would.
Could put a whisper sound down there.
I know a guy.
If somebody wants one down there, I'd definitely be interested in helping set it up. But I'm guessing if you have a receiver site all planned, probably don't want a whisper sound right next door.
Well, we've done fine up at ERC because it's 10 kilometers away. So.
Well, just let me know if the time comes, and you just need somebody to show up down there. Let me know.
We'll keep looking into it. As I said, well, I spoke with the program officers a couple of weeks ago, and I had one of the questions I'd asked is, what's the possibility of putting a transmitter down there? And I did not get a straight answer from them. So it's yeah. So we'll keep working on it.
Okay, but I'll build a special one if it comes to it.
Okay.
I've been to Antarctica once, and I just can't love to get back there again.
Yeah.
And what I did was the tourist version, which is, I assume it's completely different than what you guys are doing. So that would be something. Anyway.
I know somebody who just spent a year at the South Pole, and he's not a ham, but we're working on it. And he's talked about going back. Point is, if you do your research, you may find some hams down there, and they can probably help.
They're definitely around.
The whisper sound up at ERC is getting out. So this is you're making. I can't share. Why can't I share? Okay.
Is that site reporting to PSK Reporter? Let's go see.
Yeah, it'll report PSK Reporter. The whisper sounds. I mean, the whisper sites report everything on all bands. PSK and WhisperNet and.
What's that call sign again? VY0.
ERC.
E.
Victor, Yankee 0, Easy Roger Charlie. Okay.
Um, hmm.
You know, my instance of Zoom here doesn't allow me to share a screen with you. I get exclamation points in front of each of them.
That doesn't make any sense.
I've never seen this before.
I'm gonna bring up well, once I find it, a picture showing the three of the sites.
Yeah, there's your whisper sound at DRC is on, people have heard it on 30, 20, 15, and 6. I'm sorry, and 10. 6 receives on 10. That's maybe it's just
Okay,
the,
I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, I think that's it.
look at that.
Yeah.
So that's Ellesmere.
Which way? Transmit or receive?
Transmit. That's
That's your whisper sign.
that's my whisper sound getting out.
'Cause I'm looking at the
only
receiver
only
one.
4 bands.
Yeah.
But that's because the others are shut off because the antenna is kind of crappy on those other bands. These are the bands that we could get a reasonable match.
Well, would it hurt to transmit on the others?
The current consumption, I mean, my transmitters would burn out.
Oh, okay.
So instead they shut down. If the current gets too high, there's an automatic
Okay,
shut down on those outputs.
What bands is it listening on? When I looked at it, it looked like it was all bands, I think.
The receiver,
This is the transmitter. You were looking at the receiver.
Yeah.
Receiver's listening on all bands.
I'm looking at the receiver now, and it's not got a lot of spots, and most of them are 20 meters.
No, it isn't. I don't need to talk to Pierre Fogel about it. See.
How have conditions been the last day? Didn't we have a CME that hit a couple days ago?
I think so.
I think we did something fairly.
My spots have been variable.
Somebody's been reporting, Aurora.
We're gonna have one hit either tonight or in the morning.
Okay.
And if you see it, here's our Antarctica whisper sound. Working on a lot of bands.
Yeah.
I have on the 30-meter band, I've detected Antarctica on whisper, just using a ham stick antenna on a tripod on my back patio.
No reports from South America.
That's kind of interesting because we've got well, there are a couple sites down around there that should be picking it up, or could if it got in. But anyway, that's kind of neat.
Maybe the skip is very long.
Well, there's is that transmitting whisper 2 or 4W transmissions?
Yeah, I'd have to look at how they have them configured. And I will do that now. But yeah, I think Ellesmere is, well, I've forgotten who's sending what now. I'll find it.
I think Ellesmere sending whisper 2.
That sounds right.
But I'm not sure about DP0.
Well, I'll tell you in a minute here.
They're receiving all modes, right, Rob?
Yeah. We have, interestingly, there was an interesting presentation on last Thursday I got into it late, but it was this VK6 fellow who's transmitting on 630 and 2200 from Western Australia near Perth. And he went into the details of his transmitter, I realized at that point that KPH had received him once or twice, but it was because it was very weak, and that was because the RX888 there is unmodified.
Oh,
So one of the things we have to do this week, Nathaniel, is remove the bias T transformers from all the 888s, so that they will receive down to, I don't know, they'll go down below 100 kilohertz if you remove the bias T. But if you don't, they're deaf down there.
Mm.
So one more reason to have our own 888 design. We should talk to DX Engineering about this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, another thing that they could build.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
oh, a quick message here while I see Scott's online in 5TNL. I'm going through your pull request. Sorry I'm taking so long, but I'm putting some comments on some of them you want to read. Just let you know.
Oh, great. They definitely need your comments because I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, it's okay. That's how you learn.
Let's see. What else do we?
The Ellesmere station is transmitting on Whisper. Numair, DP0GVN is transmitting FST, 4W-120.
Well, that's okay. That's why you won't hear. That's why there's no reporters. The only people regularly listening for 4W are Demon sites, and the one site I have in South America is Fernando in Brasilia. He has a 888, but he couldn't get it to work with the external clock, and he just texted me a couple of days ago and said a friend of his found out that the connector, the external clock connector on the printed circuit board of the 888 was mis-soldered, so that the external clock signal was not arriving in the 888. So I'm hoping that he will be able to bring that online. He has a pretty decent remote receive site outside of Brasilia. So I think that hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have, he's south of the equator, a little south of the equator. And he has a full-on Whisper Demon Grape reporter will be coming in from there. So I'm looking forward to that, adding one more site to our arsenal. So, and when he was working using the Kiwis, he was doing DP0 regularly. So
I gotta do some other stuff here. So it's been great talking to you guys.
okay,
See, Jonathan. Yeah, let's trade some email and maybe a one-on-one video call in a couple days. I'm on the road for the next few days, but after that, I'd like to do some kind of high bandwidth communication on this GPS synchronization board. And Scott and anyone
that's
else.
great. Thanks for working on that, Paul. I really appreciate it because I the evidence from our measurements at WWE is that if you calibrate on one band, if you know what the offset is in one of the output streams, all of the output streams have the same offset in the wave file. So the tones start. If you go to to WWE 10 meters and you see the tone starts at 65 milliseconds into the wave file, it will stay there for days, if not weeks. I mean, I've been running that. And the same offset will be found in the 5 megahertz WWV, 2.5, 15, all of them will be at 65 milliseconds. So if you have a calibration signal, and now this is a good question. That'll work well for IQ because we could add any frequency in as an IQ recorder. We do this. Okay, you just need. I think they all need to be in the same multicast group, so they're all, they all are coming from one FFT job and one set of linear demodulators, for that one job. So the ARCs AAA is, we set them up. There's one, I don't know what you call it, a group of transmissions that are all the whisper frequencies, and the AAA sends those to one multicast output address, and that is an RTP stream that contains samples from all of those bands. So within that group, I think the octets are all the same. So I think your technique, we can, just add another band and get your signal, then the calibration from your signal could be applied to all of the other whisper or the other WWV bands. And
Yeah, actually,
we could get
that's
them all into time alignment, absolute time alignment, pretty close. I mean, this is not going to be phase accurate, but it'll be,
no.
we'll be within probably tens of microseconds. So it should be good for time of flight, right? We should be able to do time of flight. That's the goal,
That's
right?
yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And I was kind of one of several reasons I was interested in exploring this technique. Actually, but I'm also working kind of simultaneously, or at least looking into a completely different time synchronization board, and that's for Jonathan, KC3EE
EEY.
EEY. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. And that injects a signal into an audio channel, and that's so that's actually quite a bit simpler. Mechanical details and requirements need to be fleshed out, and probably the hardest part is dealing with the tariff situation. Once we agree on what needs to be done, but they're both really fun projects, and looking forward to that. The one that you're talking about, Rob, we need to figure out what type of modulated signal do we actually want. I've voted for BPSK, similar to spread spectrum or identical, quasi-random signal that just is continuous. And then the pattern within that gives you the time alignment, but that requires some software at the receive end that's, way over my head. So, Phil or somebody who knows how to do that stuff would probably have to jump in. First of all, tell us if, what I'm proposing is even possible or practical. And if not, what would be a better way to do it? But I'm pretty sure I can get you at least 20 plus or minus 20 microseconds, and probably quite a bit better than that once I get my my loop filter under control for the digital phase lock loop. So we'll see how that goes.
What kind of
Anyway,
bandwidth would you have for this signal? I mean, you might be getting rather excessive on your time alignment.
well, bandwidth. First of all, we're talking about a signal that's injected locally into the receiver, so we are not constrained by the 2 point.
All right, that method, yeah. But
Yeah.
still, what I'm saying is that depending on the bandwidth of your individual channels that are receiving actual measurements, this may be excessive. Doesn't hurt, but it's
Excessive meaning what? We can't get that even if I can launch at 20 microsecond resolution, or
well, my point is that if the signal you're measuring, the scientific signal you're measuring is narrowband, then that's going to limit the time accuracy of that signal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on over what period of time you're averaging a bunch of measurements too, but
Well, yeah.
yeah, okay.
Uncertainty principle, right? I mean,
Yeah, agreed.
Wide in frequency, narrow in time, vice versa, right?
Yeah, and we can, it's going to be, it's not going to be, what I can do is not a super wideband signal. It's, at the most, let's say a 2 kilobit per second pattern, or,
Well,
you
it's going
know,
to be limited by regs to 2.8 kilohertz unless we're going to get STAs.
no, it's not, because we're not sending it out over the air. It's just going into the receiver
No,
directionally.
no. I'm talking about whatever it is you want to measure over the air. If it's going to be an amateur signal,
Okay,
then it's going to be
okay.
20 kilohertz,
I
right?
follow you that. And what we're measuring is what Rob's talking about,
Okay.
with the, time of arrival of the whisper signals. And I think he's really looking at, millisecond type accuracy, probably but
Okay. Millisecond is quite reasonable, right? I mean,
yeah.
2 kilohertz, one over that is about what? About a third of a millisecond, right?
So question is, what kind of time resolution can you get on a whisper type signal using, K9Q? And that's what I
Yeah.
don't know.
So you're talking about, I mean, intervals on the order of 300 microseconds. Is that right? It's 1 over 2.8 kilohertz.
Well, the whisper itself is, that's FSK with what is it, 0.7 or 1.2 or something?
But you're not gonna try to measure time of flight on whisper signals
No.
because the baud rate.
No. I'm assuming you have a new signal that uses all the bandwidth available to us, which is 2.8 kilohertz.
And that's what,
And,
I don't
and
know, Rob, what signals are
that's
you
a
looking
simple
at to
time.
measure?
That corresponds to a simple time of 357 microseconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can measure a fraction of that, of course. I mean, just as GPS gets better accuracy than you would think from the chip rate, you can get better accuracy than that, but it's not going to be, probably more than an order of magnitude faster.
Right.
Well,
It's also in the signal noise ratio. You can only get this if the signal noise ratio is high, which could include averaging over a long time. But if it's the thing, the channel that you're measuring is also changing, then you're limited in how much of that you can do. Right?
Yeah, no, this is a subject for a good conversation, I think, focused on that. Focused on, Rob, what you're trying to achieve. I'm looking at this as what can I cheaply and easily generate? What kind of signals can I generate? But then how are they
Well, I
what
think
can be
your
done
method
with those
is great.
signals is the next
I think your
question.
method is great. I want one. I'm just commenting that, and saying, okay, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What does that really require? It may not happen.
well, I think ultimately the question is there's been this effort underway at times to measure successful effort to measure time of flight of
Right.
WWV transmissions
Right.
by injecting, I think, utilizing tone injection times, and I think that tone. I don't know about that, but there's been exactly how that was done. But my understanding is that method seemed to work and achieved resolutions on the order of hundreds of miles about
Okay.
time of flight, which is
Remember, WWV has a delay of its own. It's documented. I can look it up.
well, that's another thing. But there is a group, I think, at Case Western has been exploring introducing costless arrays
Yeah.
into the WWV train.
Well,
And
FCA already uses them for synchronization. There are 3 of them in every transmission.
yeah,
Middle, beginning.
yeah. Well, so I think that they've been. Do you know? I don't know if we've lost Nathaniel. It's pretty late for him. So
No,
Yeah.
he's still there.
I'm still here.
do you know about this group at Case Western that are working on costless arrays for WW?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Are they?
We're
Would
talking
would
about them in
they?
years.
David Kasdan's doing most of that work.
Again, I got to run here, but who here is going to be at Dayton at the Hamvention? Because I'm going to be there. I'd love to, get together for coffee or whatever spare time we can find.
Dayton's a zoo. It's not always the best place for in-depth conversation.
Well, maybe dinner, one night.
Well,
I don't know.
Here's a pitch. There's a dinner speaker who's going to be speaking at the AMSAT TAPR banquet, and that's Phil. So get your ticket.
Last I looked, their schedule was in flux. So
I just want to make one comment. I know that Phil was talking about making measurements off the air. What measurement where you only have the 2.8 kilohertz bandwidth for amateur transmissions, and that may be true, but if we're talking about the RX 888, there's no reason that we have to limit ourselves to receiving amateur transmissions. There may be other waveforms from other services that we want to be able to measure too.
Like coastal radar.
Right, coastal radars, absolutely. So I think we should strive to get the best timing accuracy we possibly can. We possibly can afford, we can engineer for, and not just say, able to satisfy the amateur requirements.
Right.
So I think that's one comment I had from listening to this.
Oh, by the way, guys, here's VY0 ERC over the last 24 hours. Is this still right, Rob?
Yeah, that looks right to me.
Looks like mostly 20 meters. Some 17. Let's see. It's 20 meters. So I don't know. Maybe Arctic ionospheric conditions. I don't know.
It's not the best antenna, I think.
Okay, good night, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna say
Bye, Paul.
73 as well, and I will see
Paul.
see
Me
people in the
too.
morning.
See ya.
Yeah.
Good
See
night,
you all
everyone.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay.